Hello everyone! You clever viewer probably know that some Disney film cartoons are based on fairy tales by famous writers like Hans Christian Andersen and the Grimm brothers. Well, it's actually a common practice. You just take a famous children's story and shoot a beautiful animated film, right? But very few people know that the original stories were not entirely childish, and if you decide to read them, you'll be very surprised. Why? Well, let's just say that if Zootopia were based on a children's story from the 17th century, Nick would not only be pulling Judy by the ears, but he could have actually eaten her in the end. Ugh. But don't worry, because we're going to show you the real endings to 10 Disney cartoons, which you've hardly heard of before. Let's get it on. Hercules. Honestly, we understand the changes made by Disney writers, because taking a Greek myth as basis for a cartoon and making it kid-friendly is not an easy task. The people who originally came up with the adventures of this hero were not writing fairy tales, so Hercules wasn't a good little fellow. And frankly speaking, he wasn't that smart. Despite all his deeds, he was terribly unfortunate in life. Basically because Hera, this goddess in pink who was his mother in the cartoon, didn't like him, and constantly created problems for him. She even sent 2 snakes into his crib, and there's no need to blame poor Hades. In the myths, just as in the cartoon, the constellation of Hercules is still placed in the sky. But before that, he died, and not at all as the animators showed us. Nevertheless, the hero did have a girlfriend with a similar name. She was known as Megara, and she even gave birth to Hercules' several sons. Why several, you ask? Because these are ancient Greek myths and everything is complicated. Now imagine poor Phil nursing the whole crowd of 8 future heroes. Tangled. Let's be honest, if Disney decided to shoot a cartoon about Rapunzel without any changes, there would be no Pascal, and there'd be no frying pans, no Flynn, not even a horse for crying out loud. It would probably be rather boring, right? Well, in fact, in the original version, Rapunzel is more like a thriller than a Disney cartoon. The parents almost voluntarily give the child to a creepy witch, and when the little girl turns 12, she's locked in a tower, where the prince finds her and asks her to marry him. But the wicked stepmother, because every fairy tale has one, cuts off Rapunzel's hair and kicks her out of the tower, and deprives the prince of his sight. Why? Because she's a wicked stepmother, of course. Fortunately, the blind prince wandering through the forest accidentally meets his own children Rapunzel gave birth to, and she heals him with her magic tears. Well, at least the ending is quite in the spirit of Disney. Little Mermaid. What if the evil witch hadn't hypnotized Prince Eric, forcing him to marry Ariel, and he himself had chosen another girl? What if Ariel were forced to kill her lover in order to save her life? And what if this is not someone's eerie fantasy, but a very real version of the tale? Yes, that's exactly what Hans Christian Andersen wrote, and it seems we need to thank the Disney studio for saving hundreds of thousands of little spectators from tears. By the way, in the fairy tale, Ariel couldn't kill the prince and jumped from the ship to the sea, turning into foam. That's it. No happily ever after. Also, an older version of the tale by another author is like a Game of Thrones episode, with intrigues, murders and jealousy. Yeah, a perfect fairy tale for children. Sleeping Beauty. Like a bunch of other famous fairy tales, the story of the Sleeping Beauty looks like a script for a horror movie. There are even poisonous bushes here that kill all unlucky travelers. In addition, instead of the prince, in the early version there's a real king, which, moreover, has long been married. That's why he couldn't stay with his beloved, and was forced to come back to his wife. And the Sleeping Beauty herself gave birth to 2 children, one of which accidentally sucked the magic splinter from her finger, and the girl woke up. Yes, all this time it was just a splinter. We were also very surprised, but magic is a very complicated thing. Of course, this is not the end of the tale. There are still many terrible moments, like the evil, like really evil queen. If you don't believe us, read it for yourself. Pocahontas. Unlike fairy tales based only on rich and sometimes rather strange fantasy of ancient authors, the story of Pocahontas has a real historical basis. So let's remember what Disney has. A raccoon, cherries, a naughty pug. Wait, these aren't the main characters. Oh, yes, Captain John Smith, strangely similar to Richard Gere, Pocahontas, the Princess of the Indians, and the story of their love. And there was a talking tree, of course. In the cartoon, the wounded John Smith travels back to England, and in the sequel, Pocahontas even follows him. Along the way, she finds a new love, and after all sorts of adventures, returns back to America. But if Disney decided to make a documentary, John Smith would have worn a beard and would have dropped out of the story almost immediately. Yes, the beautiful scene with the escape of the execution seems historically real, but Pocahontas at that time was only 12, and it probably didn't look so cool. At the age of 17, the Indian princess was captured by colonists and married to John Rolfe, who later took her to England. As a result, Pocahontas managed to become quite popular in the Old World. She gave birth to their son Thomas and died from smallpox on the way back to Virginia, and she was only 22. The real story's probably not romantic enough for Disney. Cinderella. This Disney classic is based on a fairy tale by Charles Perrault, and, you know, everything sounds pretty cute? Well, compared with other original stories, this one is pretty innocent, but the Grimm's version actually resembles a horror movie like Saw. No, don't worry, Cinderella is alright, but her evil sisters really caught it bad. Not only do they make big sacrifices to fit into the golden slipper, but they were punished by birds for their actions. Yes, just imagine what would happen if in the cartoon these cute birds also turned out to be a tool for revenge, but it's okay for a fairy tale, right? Oh, these Grimm brothers. Pinocchio. For some people, the story of Pinocchio, even in the Disney version, seems rather gloomy, but believe us, the original version is even worse, and all because of the fact that its author, Carlo Collodi, wanted to teach small readers that one should not behave badly, one must always listen to their parents, and one must speak only the truth. Well, you get the idea, but it seems to us that he overdid it a little and created a horror story. See it for yourself. In the original story, Pinocchio is an unbearable, naughty and evil wooden little boy. He even threw a hammer at the cricket, hit him and didn't regret it afterwards, although the cricket had it really bad. In addition, because of the disobedience of this wooden boy, the old father goes to jail, and the original ending is extremely didactic. How does it go? Well, let's just say there are robbers, a tree. Ugh, what a horror. Fortunately, Disney still decided to make an adaptation and not to film the fairy tale itself. Although the scene with the boys turning into donkeys still looks scary, don't you think? The Lion King. Perhaps The Lion King is one of the coolest Disney cartoons. We doubt anyone will deny that it's awesome and can be considered a classic nowadays. But hold your Hakuna Matata, because we're going to surprise you. According to the creators, they were inspired by Shakespeare himself. You know where this is going, right? Yes, taking Hamlet as the basis, the writers were simply forced to bring the story to a triumphant and very tragic ending. But wait, we already have a scene with the death of Mufasa. Hey, Disney, that's enough! Fortunately, someone at the studio managed to realize that the children's cartoon is, after all, not a Shakespearean tragedy, and the scene with a fire on the Pride Rock turned into a well-known and awesome battle of two lions, as a result of which Simba became the legitimate ruler, and Scar, well, Scar's the villain. What else could we have expected from him? The Hunchback of Notre Dame. Here's another story based on a classic work, this time by French writer Victor Hugo. We must say that, unlike the cartoon, his novel is not as cheerful as Disney showed us, and the plot itself, like the characters, changed significantly. For example, Frollo changed his profession, Phoebus came to the good side, and Quasimodo got a good ear. Also, there are a lot of gloomy scenes in the book, for example with dirt and diseases. Of course, Disney tried to keep the love, square, but everything turned out much softer than Hugo described it. Just imagine what the cartoon would look like if instead of a modest friend zone, we would have to see the true love afflictions of Quasimodo, and Phoebus would have given Esmeralda into the hands of the guards without feeling any remorse. Bad, bad, Captain. However, it seems that Disney had a good reason for all these changes, because the end of the book is very tragic. Esmeralda, Frollo and Quasimodo are dying, and Phoebus, well, it didn't work out for Phoebus either. He got married. Tarzan. The Tarzan animated film and also the live-action film starring Alexander Skarsgård were inspired by the novel Tarzan of the Apes. This book was written back in 1912 by Edgar Burroughs, and at that time it had a frantic success. Of course, since there were adventures, jungles, fights, wow! Incidentally, in the original story, Tarzan not only bears the name John Clayton, but also is a real British lord, which however doesn't prevent him from climbing trees. But here's an interesting point. In the book, as in the Disney cartoon, the main character follows Jane into the city and discovers that his beloved one is engaged to another man. And not just to some guy, but to Tarzan's cousin himself, William Clayton, who received the entire legacy of John, who everyone thought was dead. Instead of proving who he was, Tarzan returned to live in the jungle to make Jane happy. Yeah, the real finale isn't as joyful as the Disney film, right? But don't worry. Unlike other fairy tales, this one has a whole bunch of sequels in which Jane and Tarzan got together again. Friends, did you know about these amazing, frightening stories? Tell us in the comments and give us a like if you enjoyed the video. Amazing gadgets, upcoming technologies, incredible inventions, and other cool stuff related to high tech on TechZone. Subscribe, you won't regret it. The link is on the screen and in the description.
Thanks for watching. Please like and share the video in social networks, and we'll be right back to you as fast as we can.